Welcome to the Algebra Final Review for Standard 9. This is going to be part 1. We're going to do 3 parts in all, hopefully. In this one we will cover how to solve using a graphing calculator and also how to solve using factoring. And we'll do problem 1A. In the second one we will do problem B. And in the third one we will talk about graphing parabolas and using those to answer questions. Okay, so I think we've covered kind of what we're going to talk about. We need to know how to factor, we need to know how to be able to use a quadratic formula and solve using graphing, and also some things about parabolas and how to read them. Okay, in this course we have done 2 primary groups of functions. We've done linear functions, which are straight lines, and here toward the end of the year we did quadratics. When you do a quadratic, you're going to get a graph that looks like this, a parabola, kind of a U-shaped. One of the ways that you can tell that something is a parabola is that it will have a second power or degree as its highest power. So in this one, this is kind of a fairly common looking example of it, x squared plus 3x plus 7. That would be a quadratic because it has a second power. Most linear functions just have the single power of x term. Okay, so 3 different ways of solving. We can solve by graphing, we can solve by factoring, which we use diamonds and rectangle problems to kind of help make that process easier. If you need more help with that, you can see more on it in video AC 8.1.2. Those are actually pretty decent at that. There's also, with the videos I'm uploading this time, will be a review of the quadratic formula that goes just into depth on how to do the quadratic formula. So let's look at graphing first. When we look at graphing, if I look at a graph of a parabola, I can tell what the solutions or answers are going to be because they're the same as the x-intercepts. So if I know the x values of the x-intercepts, I know the solutions to the quadratic. This one, I just want you to look, you see it crosses the x-axis twice, so it's going to have 2 answers. This one just barely comes down, touches the x-axis, and goes back up. It's only going to have 1. This one doesn't cross the x-axis at all, and so at least in this course, we're going to just say for now that it has no real solutions. Okay, so let's look at when we will want to use these. I'm not going to go into deep depth on this, but basically if you have a graphing calculator, then by graphing is by far a nice option for you, especially if you're in a hurry and you don't have to be very exact. Graphing calculator, all you have to do is look at the graph, find out where it crosses the x-axis, and that will be your solutions. It does not work if you are trying to find non-real solutions, which you won't cover in this class, but for right now it'll cover most of the things that you're trying to find. Remember that you're looking for the x-intercepts. Okay? Factoring is kind of nice if you have nice numbers. If you've got numbers that look like they multiply and add to integers or whole numbers, then that works really, really good. The quadratic formula works on almost all of them, but it has the disadvantage that it has a lot of steps and a lot of places that you can make mistakes. It also can be done on a calculator. The calculators can be programmed to do it. And so a lot of people will use this just because it works on so many different kinds of problems, even though it's a little bit longer to work with. Okay, so we're going to show you how to graph this one on the graphing calculator. Remember that if I'm doing this, that I'm going to have to put this in on my y equals button, which is right here. Let's turn on y equals. I'm going to type this in. It needs to be in the right form. X squared plus 12x plus 36. I'm going to go and zoom it standard first to see where it crosses. And there it is. And it looks like it might just hit in one place, so I'm going to zoom in on it and see what I get. So I'm doing a little zoom box. Remember, you push zoom and zoom box. Move the cursor to where you want to start zooming. So I'm going to push enter there now, and now it's going to let me draw a box around the section of the graph that I want to look at. And that looks pretty much like it's just going to cross at one place right there. I'm going to see what that value is, and I'm going to trace the graph, and it looks like it crosses right at about 6, or -6 I should say. So I think my value is going to be -6. If I were doing a multiple choice test, I'd say it's about -6, and that would help me pick that. As I said, graphing isn't exact. There are some methods we can use, but we're not going to talk about them at this point, but they're still approximations. Okay, so let's remember that answer, because we're going to do the same problem now using factoring. And remember, we used a diamond and a rectangle to do that. And so remember, set video 812, parts 1 and 2 basically go over how to use a diamond and a rectangle to solve a quadratic. I'm going to go ahead and put in my things in the correct places. The x squared term goes here. The constant there. The linear or x term by itself goes here. And then I need a number for the top of my diamond. Remember, I get that by multiplying the constant by the x term, and I'll get 36x squared. So I need a number that multiplies to 36x squared and adds to 12x. I know they're both going to have x's. So let's look at the numbers that will give me 36 as multiples, or as factors, I should say. I could do 1 times 36, 2 times 18, 3 times 12, 4 times 9, 5 doesn't work, 6 times 6, 7 doesn't work, 8 doesn't work, 9's already there. So we've got all the ones. Okay, so which ones of these, if I add them instead of multiplying, will give me 36? I'm sorry, if I multiply them I get 36, and I add them and I will get 12. Well, it looks to me like this is the set of numbers that will do that, so I'm going to plug them in and see if that works. 6 plus 6 is 12. 6 times 6 is 36. So I'm going to move these two over here from the diamond. Okay, slowing down for a moment. I need to factor the greatest common factor out of this row. So what number will what's the greatest common factor of the number 1 and 6? The biggest number that will divide both of them. Well, the biggest number that will divide both of them is 1. What is the greatest factor of x squared and x? Well, it's usually the least number of x's you have, and that in this case is a first power x. Now I'm going to use this as my first piece to multiply these two boxes. So x times what is x squared? X times x. X times what is 6x? 6. Now I'm going to do it up this way. I already got the first one. X times x, of course, is x squared. X times what is 6x? That's also going to be 6. So here are my two factors. X plus 6 on this side and x plus 6 on that side. So I'm going to list my factors up here. X plus 6 times x plus 6. Now, if I want to solve this, I need to take my factors and set them equal to 0. So I took those two factors, set them both equal to 0. Just use regular algebra to solve them. X equals -6 there, and x equals -6 there. In this case, we just had one solution, and the one solution is x equals -6. So this was a good example of this kind of a problem. And that's what we saw in the graph, is that it just touched in one place. So since it just touched in one place, we ended up with just one answer. Once again, it's the same answer that we found on our calculator when we looked down here and we did an approximation. We found that it was about at -6. Okay, good luck.